Quality. Take the bag out, look at all the like fresh ingredients in
All
it.
the goodies in it. Oh, look at that. And what's the deal with the brew kit?
It's me.
Sort of for members and bits and pieces. How's that work?
We just sell it, but we're really keen that like, everything we've bought has been from like a B Corp organisation, so carbon neutral organisation, sustainable stuff. As local as possible, so Brew Tea are a northern brand.
Oh, great.
North Star Coffee are a coffee roastery in Leeds that only supply to a select handful of kind of outlets. We're one of them. They turned up with a sapphire crystal refractor machine to put the coffee through to make sure that it was the right standard, the machine could handle it. But all those little touches like have added up to it being elevating the experience to perhaps past what certainly is the norm for a Jiu-Jitsu academy or perhaps any other gym setup of this nature.
I mean, just any gym. Like, you come in and you just feel it straight away, and it's just, like I say, everyone came in, it's just so tidy, so well done, just really high end.
Thanks, man.
No, it really hits you straight away. It's
Good.
lovely to see. It's just so tidy, that's the key thing. I think with a lot of gyms, there's always just stuff everywhere.
Can't be, can it? I mean, every time we train, that's the second class sessions we've had today, and after both sessions the mats are mopped, swept, hoovered, and it has to be immaculate. We have a professional cleaning team comes in 3 times a week.
Oh, really? Yeah, just to get it bombed.
Again, they do everything, every chair leg, every picture frame, every window, every bit of glass gets done.
Nice.
Gotta be the best.
Because all kids can't pressing their faces to the
Yeah.
the windows.
Yeah.
Good stuff. We're good to go?
Good to go.
Good to go. All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the North Leeds Jitz podcast. Today on the show, joined by Professor Mike.
What's up?
And we're joined by Duncan Roy, who's, well, I don't know much about Duncan, so I'm going to be taking I don't know much also about rowing, so I'm taking very much the naive person approach as usual in these matters. We've had rugby players and stuff on before. I don't know anything about that either.
That's why I explained the different shape of ball.
Yeah,
it's like an egg-shaped ball too. That's good for an interviewer, right? Because there's no kind of like loaded questions. It's like you're just interested in finding out.
Exactly. And Mike will take more of the educated approach of knowing about rowing and stuff. So yeah, I don't know where to really start. I don't know if we should talk about how the highlights that Mike kind of mentioned before and then go backwards, or what do you think? What are your biggest rowing achievements in your mind?
Good question. I think the obvious ones from the external perspective would be like some of the things I've done more recently, but what I feel my biggest achievement was I got injured when I was in the army on a training exercise, like nothing cool. I wish I could say I got injured jumping out of a helicopter or something, but I just fell over on a training exercise, which happens to the best of us. Yeah,
Right,
so
that's something you've got in common then, because you get injured on a training exercise,
Yeah,
right?
I get injured a lot on training exercises.
Beasted to death.
today has been a success walking out of here under my own steam. So, but yes, I got injured in the army and then learned indoor rowing, and then just through my rehabilitation program, and then a year later went on to win the Army Championships at like 2K distance, and then sort of brought it back to the regiment that I was in at the time, and like sort of brought other people along that journey, and then coached the team or captained the team, and then the next year went back again as a team and won the team event. So that for me is the thing that I harness with the most like pride and the most like, yeah, I think it's my biggest achievement to go from injury, learning that sport, and winning that, and it's still that fire and that passion that I sort of carry through to today, and it's just evolved from indoor rowing to river rowing, and then ultimately now ocean rowing, and then as a rower and now as a coach, and I just love it, like the community around it, the sport. It's just been one, like you can just draw the dots right back from that first time I got on the rowing machine with my injury to today, and yeah, I just love that, riding that wave, to sort of use an analogy, and yeah, here we are, drinking a ginger tea, talking about it. Yeah, it's just an amazing journey to be on, and just feel very privileged. So
Well, let's get the accolades out of the way
Yeah.
in one go then. So what else have you done? There's no place for modesty here, Duncan. So
Yeah.
I
just
you
went
win the
down
Army Championships.
down the stream, you know.
Yeah. So, world record this year for the fastest crossing across the Pacific.
Yeah, on the mid-Pacific routes, so there's different routes within ocean rowing. So on the Pacific Ocean, so if people aren't aware, the Pacific Ocean is basically between Japan, Australia, and the United States of America, like the West Coast, like California, that side to Mexico, and everything in the middle. But we didn't row all the way across. We rowed from San Francisco to Hawaii, which is like a known race route called the Mid-Pacific. It's 2,400 nautical miles there or thereabouts. So it's slightly shorter than the Atlantic race that Professor Mike's doing next December on the Atlantic. But yeah, that's what we did this summer. So yeah, that was a really good experience. With,
world record?
You've got the world
by
record.
9 days.
9 days, yeah. Yes. So.
Just a week and a half.
Yeah.
Quicker than anyone else ever done it. It's pretty impressive. And that's was a pretty formidable team in terms of experience, wasn't it? So pretty good team. And you've done the Atlantic twice.
Atlantic twice, yeah.
Rode around Great Britain.
82%.
82% of Great Britain's coastline.
Yeah.
Once. What else have you done?
That's all my ocean rows, yeah. 4 ocean rows.
And now you're one of the most foremost ocean rowing coaches in the UK, world maybe. Most teams who do the Atlantic or any ocean rowing would come across you, I would suggest, but you only take on a small number of clients every year.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And I do different levels of service depending on how much contact time the teams want. But yeah, it's been a really good journey, and yeah, started off just literally by getting into it through the injury, and then my first row was like an absolute nightmare. Like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and externally it was quite successful in the respect of we ended up getting 2 Guinness World Records for it because of how badly we prepared and all the issues we had. We ended up stopping in Africa to make some repairs in Cape Verde, and then by proximity setting off again and arriving in South America in French Guiana. Even though it was an absolute nightmare, we got 2 Guinness World Records. So you could say it was quite successful, but I felt like a complete fraud when I came back, and actually it was really hard for me. I served my last day in the army on that row, so it was the 6th of February 2018, and it was like my last day in the military. So it was a metaphorical and a physical journey of arriving in South America as a civilian, and obviously finishing the row. And then I came back to the UK, and I think with any of these big expeditions, you there's a risk of having the post-expedition blues, which I don't know if you get that when you compete. Maybe you're building up to competition for so long, and then
not so much, no, because there's always something to work on, and you're going to go again and again and again, and so it's a constant evolution of your jiu-jitsu, and the competition is the testing the ground. I think on an ocean row, as I understand it, and I'm learning quite fast, you're not going to do one every year. You might do one in your lifetime. To someone who's done multiple ocean rows, quite rare. So for some people, and it's because it's over such a long, protracted period of time, and it's so different, I can see how people come back and miss the solitude, or miss the adventure, or miss the fact they haven't had to be on the phone or their email for a while.
Yeah, the purpose and it's like there's the bits of things, like you say, that you miss from being out on the ocean, that the detachment and solitude and all these, that ability to be disconnected, it's amazing, and all the things that come with that, but also that drive for 2 years. In every quiet moment, you've been at that level of right, I've got to speak to this sponsor, got to get a training thing booked in, I've got this fundraising engagement thing, got to do this, got to do that, insurance, signing up for that, doing this, and then suddenly you get back and it's like, now what? Well, I just need to go to Tesco's and do the shopping. What? I've just rode the Atlantic. It's quite a hard, crash when you come back. But on top of that, we obviously had quite a few crew issues, quite a few technical issues. It was really quite difficult to sort of digest that, and then to come home. I wasn't even just going back into my normal life,
That's a big change, leaving the military.
Leaving the military as well, which is also, notorious for having some low points as well, and it can be quite a hard transition period. So I was dealing with leaving the military, coming off the back of an expedition that had gone horribly wrong for want of a lot other words, and geographically moved from Devon, where I'd just spent the last 3 years, back up to Yorkshire. And obviously I'm a proud Yorkshireman, but I had my little routine down in Devon, my Monday night yoga, We went for Cake Wednesday down in town. You know,
That sounds awesome. We need to start
Cake
Cake Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
so you know, I had a little rhythm, and then suddenly I didn't have that, you know, support network of friends and my routine. Geographically, I was back home where I hadn't been really for 5 or 6 years. So it was just sort of starting from scratch. Not like I was unemployed. You know, it was all these different things, and because I'd spent all my time, my medical discharge time, preparing for my first row, I'd not given it 1 ounce of thought as to what I was going to do when I get back. So came back, crashed pretty hard mentally, physically. Obviously, it took it from me as well, being out, you know, on the water for 65 days. And then, yeah, we got these 2 Guinness World Records, and I was like, we don't deserve them at all. Like, it's an absolute joke. It's a mockery. And then it took me about a year to sort of come around to the view of viewing the successes of it. And I was very fortunate that one of the Yorkshire mums, do you know the Yorkshire mums?
Yeah, I met, is it Francis, one of them?
Yeah, Francis,
Yeah,
yeah,
Francis.
Francis King, yeah. Have you heard of the Yorkshire mums?
No.
So there's 4 mums from Yorkshire who knew each other through their children's school, and they I think they met down the local rowing club, like the kids' rowing club, and they were like, why don't we row across the Atlantic? And then this journey became, and in 2015 they rowed the Atlantic in the same race, and there was a massive media around them, and they were all incredible. And Helen Butters was really supportive of our team, and she does like post-expedition sort of counselling and like support for people, because she realised that a lot of people do struggle with it. So when she was doing her qualifications, she was using us as using me as a guinea pig, and it was ended up, you know, I was doing it really to help her, but actually it was massively helpful to me. And she, you know, over that period, it was really nice and measurable how I viewed my row as like a complete failure, and like just like being quite embarrassed about getting these world records, and I wouldn't talk about them or display them. And every time, you know, we got out for dinner or go out to see friends, and someone, oh, congratulations on your row, I'd be like, yeah, look, oh, it was really awful, and blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't even look at it and just be like, I couldn't even just surface level just go, oh yeah, it was. Yeah,
is that normal, or is that just you?
I think it was just maybe because of how extreme the experience was, and like because of how bad it was out there on that trip.
Are you able to talk about that?
About why for sure. So yeah, I can definitely dive into that. But yeah, I think like just to sort of touch on that point of like over that year, able to then view it differently and actually be like, do you know what? I'm proud of what we achieved because of we persevered. We could have stopped in Africa and just gone, that's enough. But we all put our differences aside, all the issues that we faced, we got back on and we finished it. And then actually going those world records, whilst, you know, the first team to row from Africa to South America, well, it's only by proximity of being poorly prepared we had to stop in Africa. It's sort of a bit of a consolation prize, but actually viewing that as with massive pride now, from then right the way through to today, for what it stands for, you know, like persevering when the chips were down and actually not giving up, and then viewing all of the failures of that row as learnings and going, actually, I learned from that how not to put the power anchor out like that, how not to prepare a boat, how not to train a team, how not to lead a team, how not to be a teammate, how, you know, and so many things about myself, you know, within that. That's not all putting it on other people, that's taking accountability myself, and then going, right, how can I use that moving forward, and then viewing it massively now as a massive asset and a huge positive. But it took a long time to go through that. So I think externally, going right back to the point at the start, was that is viewed as a successful row because we finished and we got 2 Guinness World Records, but it was a complete and utter failure. Whereas my Around Britain row, we only got 82% of the way around, no world records, didn't finish it because of our timeline and, you know, various other things. But ultimately that was probably one of my most successful rows because of the things we learnt along the way and all the rest of it. So it's quite interesting how you view things as being successful or not.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, like, is that the same as jiu-jitsu, the blues bit, but I think that's probably more closely aligned to competition. You could go to competition and win, yet have a really poor performance for you. And now people are going to hand you a gold medal, but actually you know that you're better than that. And maybe you scraped through, or maybe you got a bit of luck, or you got a good bracket and a good buy or whatever. Or you could go and take silver or miss the podium, but be really happy with a couple of the performances. I'll just note Sam Brown, who competed last weekend, who, and Sam won't mind me saying this, but, you know, is not a natural physical competitor, I think is fair to say. Yeah, he lost in the latest competition he competed at, but didn't get submitted. So that, for him, is a huge win. And should be seen as a huge achievement in and of itself, because he's now much more of a resilient fighter. Okay, so it doesn't matter about the gold around the neck, like you're saying. Yeah. It's about your perception of what you wanted to achieve from experience.
Yeah, and that's taken me a long time to, you know, to gain and to learn. You know, it's taken me 5 years to sort of develop into that sort of mindset. But it's a nice place to be now to actually, and to be able to help that with teams as well, because I think a lot of teams come into the sport going, we're going to break this record, we want to win this race, and a lot of the times I'm sort of trying to go, why don't we look at it another way? You know, you're trying to focus on the outcome. You know, we always say, you know, focus on the process, and actually we can't control the weather, we can't control the other teams, but what you can control is your own training right now and your own mindset, your own preparation. So,
and that's a great lesson for any competitor in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, the one thing you can't control is your competitor.
Yeah,
I still talk about it all the time. So you've got to have because people say, should we have a game plan? You should, but you might not be able to execute it, because the minute you go, something else might happen that you're not expecting. So you just need to go with the flow state. You need to just prepare as best you can, train as hard as you can, and then come game day, if you've done that, you can be happy with whatever happens, because you know you've put the work in.
And that's exactly right. It's like sitting a test, isn't it, at school? Like, if you've done the prep and you know you couldn't have prepared any better, you've left no stone unturned, and then you come out of there with the C, you can be really happy with that, and you're like, boom, I'm really proud of getting that C in that key area, that topic that I wasn't really that strong in or whatever. Maybe I would have got a D in here if I'd not tried as hard. But then you go in there, same prep, and you come out of there with an A star, and you're like, well, I fully deserve that because I put the prep in. And I think that's I use that analogy quite a lot when I'm working with my teams, to be like, look, where do you want to be race start? Do you want to be that, you know, kid going into the exam feeling like, I've actually not prepared that well, I was out on the lash every night? Or do you actually want to be there going, I've done everything I can, so whatever happens out there, I can be proud of it and I give it my best account. Yeah. And you can't just magic it up on race day or in the competition. I imagine in BJJ, it's like you've earned that by doing the prep, haven't you?
100%.
What was the other Guinness World Book of Records? You got the Africa to South America one, and what was the other one?
Because I was the youngest on the team. So yeah, because it was a world first, there was like the oldest guy on the team got a second world record for that, and I was the youngest. Right. So got 2 for it. And again, it's like I say that thing of like initially I was like, what a joke! Like I don't deserve that. You know, what for? Just because we were badly prepared. But then it was that time period of way. And then I really proudly put it on my Instagram as like my top thing, like double Guinness World Record holder. And it's like, to start with, I didn't want to say that because I was like, people would be like, only because you're badly prepared. But then, as I say, as a developed mindset, I was like, actually really proud. And if anyone wanted to question one, I'm very happy to talk about it. And actually, it's the things that they stand for me rather than for anyone else.
So when you were going for that initial, it was the first row where the bad things happened. You stopped in Africa, right? Did you feel like you were ill prepared at the start?
That's a good question. Yeah, where did I feel we were? I knew the I's hadn't been dotted and the T's hadn't been crossed, but I didn't know to what extent. Just
because you didn't have the perspective of like having done something that big before.
And I think it's very different to where Mike is like the skipper with his own boat. He's doing all the prep. He's the project manager. He's the lead. He's like the legal owner of everything going on. He's ultimately responsible, accountable for everything. Whereas our expedition, that first one, was a bit different. So whereas Mike is obviously a solo, so clearly he's in charge of everything. I'd say most people, like if we take a team of 4, you know, normally they still run it like Mike's doing, where it's like a 2-year lead-in. You all club together to create a brand, i.e. Atlantic Grappler, and then you go through that 2-year journey as a team, raising money for a charity, selling corporate sponsorship space on the boat, raising awareness, and then boom, you do the expedition at the end. And where ours differed was there was a skipper who was effectively doing a paper seat. So it'd be like me now skippering a boat this next December, let's say, and you both applied for that boat, and then you just pay for your seat on the boat. So it's like a fractional cost of an overall campaign to get you on the boat.
Okay,
so
right.
We were paying for this fit for purpose boat, and we were paying for the skipper to lead that. So with that, there was not like the race, which is obviously very professional, the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, which Mike's doing. It's really hard to get to the start line, and they make it tough because ultimately you get to the start line, you're going to be successful on the water. And the last year's race, 100% success rate, completion. It's not because the Atlantic Ocean's easy, because they make the preparation and the journey exceptionally hard. Whereas with us, we didn't have to do any of the courses or anything like that. It's the Wild West, the sport of ocean rowing. In sailing, you wouldn't be allowed to leave. But because we've not got a sail, we've got oars, we're this weird like gap between rowing, coastal rowing. But we're not coastal rowing because we're further than 12 miles offshore. But we're not sailing because we've not got a sail. So we don't actually really exist as a sport, sort of. So there can be a few little Wild West type things going on.
Questionable antics, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I could just take you guys out there, and okay, I've done some qualifications and stuff, but ultimately no one's there to check that the boat's ready to go. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of the race, of the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, because they have the procedures in place, the checks and everything else. So I think, to answer your question, I knew things weren't as they maybe should have been, but I didn't know to what extent, no. And I thought when we get out on the water, everything will be fine, which I think I've learned over the last 5 years. It won't be. If things aren't right in the prep, they sure as hell aren't going to be fine on the water. And people say things could be worse at sea, but they can be.
So I'm thinking like for some kind of like monumental task like rowing an ocean, if just 1% of things are bad, that's probably gonna like get like that 1% becomes like a much bigger problem like over the course, right? So now with the hindsight and having done your other rows, how badly ill prepared do you think you were for that? Were you like just a little bit or
horrendous? Like completely unprepared, unsafe.
And what does that look like? What does that mean, to give it perspective to someone? Like, I don't know what an unsafe boat would be really. Just
things like we hadn't done enough training individually. So whilst the skipper was like hugely experienced, it wasn't that knowledge wasn't imparted on us. So even just 2 weeks into the row, we were looking back at things we'd done on the first week in absolute horror. We're like moving around the boats. So these boats are like 8 meters long, 1.5 meters wide. You're out in big, heavy seas, and you should be clipped on at all times. That's like the number one thing, to be clipped on. That's in the sport now. That's the message to be said around. Because if you go overboard, it's not that the casualty's leaving the boat. It's that the casualty's stationary now in the water, but the boat is leaving you at 3.5 knots, and it'll be extremely hard in 20 knots of wind to turn that boat and get back to casualty. So you have to be on the boat. You obviously stay attached to the boat at all times. Be clipped on. So we weren't clipped on. We're moving around the boat, often 2 people passing at once. So, there's a lot of movement there. These boats are rocking around a lot. We had people nearly go overboard on certain occasions. Taking a pee, just stood up nonchalantly, just having a pee in sailing. That's a big no-no. Like with sailing, that's when a lot of man overboard situations happen, is when people are having a pee because they're trying to pee over the side of the boat. The trim is affected, or they're just immobilized for a minute or two, boom comes across, or something happens, weather changes, something happens, and then they're overboard. So there's a lot of things that 2 weeks in we were even reflecting ourselves as we'd refined our processes, and the leadership was a laissez faire, learn yourself sort of thing, which isn't my approach, let's put it that way, to be kind. And I think, over that first 2 weeks we were like, God, can't believe we were doing that at the start. And then it came back to that thing of, well, why weren't we just shown? Would have taken half an hour to just go through a bit of a drill of, right, this is how I want you to do it, move around the boat, this is how I want you to pee, this is how I want you to come out of the cabin, this is the communication I want to see, this is what I want to see, blah, blah, blah. And it would have been dead easy to do. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. So it meant that we had to learn these lessons the hard way. So basically everything I coach is everything that I've learned by ill experience, if you like. And that goes from the simple task of moving around the boat, to cooking, to deploying the parachute anchor, to prepping the boat, just simple things.
And I guess with the military background, that comes probably naturally to you as well, just having like good SOPs and like knowing all those things in advance, and all the team knows it. And then was it was your team was it also from the forces on that first row, or was it?
So we had an interesting mix. There was myself, ex-Royal Engineers, as a private soldier. We then had Royal Marine Commando officer Chris Shirley. We then had a property developer from London, Neil Marsh. We had a kayaker from Ireland, who I won't mention his name, and then we had the skipper, again I won't mention his name. And ultimately, myself and Chris, the Royal Marine, I think we're very much used to good preparation, good leadership, clear communication. And obviously we found it incredibly difficult, the challenges that we faced. And I think you have a limit and a tolerance to accept that with these adventures and these sports, like certain amount of stuff can go wrong, and you have to accept that. But when you know in the preparation there have been so many red flags of like, that wasn't right, and I know that, or what don't I know that hasn't been done? You know, when there's these things that I can clearly see that haven't been done, God, well, what don't I know of the things that are in the ether of the world that I just don't understand? So for us, that was a big challenge, dealing with that. And then there was the skipper and this other chap who, ended up sort of being maybe quite happy in that environment or with that standard of things, and that created a tension between the two parties, rightly or wrongly. And then sort of Neil did a really good job of sort of trying to mediate that. So we not only were suffering a lot of technical issues, because 5 days in we had a complete power failure, no power on board, and we'd set off from Portugal. So that first row was to go from Portugal, mainland Europe, to mainland South America, to French Guiana. 5 days in, we'd lost all power. So 3 days, and they say, the first 5 to 7 days, they say, is the hardest part of any ocean row, because you're getting into the routine of the sleep cycle, the cooking, all the rest of it, you know, the seasickness, like rowing away from land, you know, the claustrophobia, the cabins, the agoraphobia of being out on the big wide open sea. So you're dealing with all of that, which is obviously difficult. And to combine with that, day 3, the batteries were going down and then charging the next day. But say that's full, they'd go down, come back up, but then be 80%. They go down, come back 70, 60. And then basically by day 5, we had no power. So
was that the solar panels not?
Well, we didn't really know what it was at the time. In hindsight, we then knew it was just the boat should have been better prepared. Maybe had some electrical testing done, maybe had the right rewire. We thought maybe it was just the batteries, but I actually think it was a solar panel issue or wiring. Still not sure to this day, but it was more of a deep-rooted issue that I think maybe could have been addressed in preparation. But, you know, things do go wrong, I'd say. So, fair enough. 5 days in, complete power failure. And when you think about motivation, you know, we'd set out on that expedition to break a world record on that crossing, and we've been selected because, you know, our strengths, you know, and I've sort of competed, as I said before, with the indoor rowing, and we had various other people with strong characters, strong backgrounds. So you sort of, again, this is a lesson learned to build at the team. So we built a team around people who were, you know, had strong experience in their own, who were all individually motivated. You bring that together without strong leadership, with a laissez-faire approach, that's just carnage. And in the military, we do these leaderless exercises to see who comes to the fore. So it'd be like, there's 10 people in there, right, shark-infested water, you've got 3 barrels and 1 plank, get across there. Who's the timekeeper? Who's doing this? Who's loud? Who sits back and assesses? And effectively, that's what we did for 65 days on the ocean row, was just having to deal with it. Not sure really where I was going with that, but
it must have been absolutely, because of course there's some real risk out there, and all those things you talked about, which are the unknowns. Your first ocean row. If it was me, I'd have been pretty angry about that. And then you're kind of trapped in this environment that you can't escape from as well. That must have been quite tough.
Yeah, and I think that's it exactly. So 5 days in, total power failure, and we've come from that mindset of trying to break the world record. So that's what I was going. So athletic team, driven, right, we're going to row 2 hours on, 2 hours off, harsh routine. That's what everyone talks about in ocean rowing. We're in 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 40, 50, 60 days, whatever. And you accept that, and you physically charge yourself up for it, mentally charge yourself up for it. And again, I think people prepare for the road they want, maybe not the road they're going to have or might have. So 5 days in, total power failure, having to mentally accept that and go, I've told all my friends and family, everyone who sponsored us, that we're going to try and break this record, and we're only 5 days in. Literally, when you looked at the map, you couldn't even notice that we'd left the coast, and we're on parachute anchor, which is a storm anchor that you put out. We put it out, and the idea being that it would stabilise us in the conditions less susceptible to capsize, while we just waited for the batteries to charge, so we had enough power to carry on and assess the situation. So we put the parachute anchor out. Just to pause there, too.
It's all good.
So, yeah, we put this parachute anchor out, and we were waiting for the batteries to recharge. But ultimately, we put the parachute anchor out wrong because we'd not done any training. We didn't know what we were doing, and it meant that instead of the bow being into the waves and being stabilised, it meant that the boat was side onto the waves, which is a really suboptimal situation to be in. And over the 5 days, we were basically spinning round, and the power anchor line got wrapped around the rudder. And the force of the parachute in the heavy weather that we experienced in 2017, it shattered the shaft of the rudder. So after 5 days...
I'm wincing because I kind of know what this kind of means a little bit. It's like, wow.
Yeah, a rudderless boat, you'll have heard that expression before. The rudder is the most important thing on the boat. Well, everything's important, right? But a boat without a rudder, it's just like, you're basically on a raft. And... We then had spent 5 days, and bearing in mind it's winter time, so we got 13 hours of darkness on those 5 days. To explain it, one of the teams this year on the North Atlantic Ocean Revival explained it really well as parachute prison. So as soon as you put the parachute anchor out, you're locked in these cabins. We're a 5-man team. It's in the bow cabin. We've got 3 guys. I was the smallest guy, and we're crammed into there. Your hips are crushing into each other because the boats aren't really meant for you to be all in the cabins. It's meant for people to be in the cabins and then on the oars, rotating round in that shift pattern. And 13 hours of darkness, being locked in, obviously cabin doors shut, really hot and humid, and just getting rattled around. I remember this one night during that first 5 days, to get there 5 days then on parachute anchor. Of that 5 days on power anchor, one night I just put my hands on my head and just in sort of just disarray. And I just was like, what am I doing? And as I got my hands to hit, I just felt one set of feet on this side of my hand and another set of feet on that side of my hand. And I just realised my personal space was the width of my hand. And it was again, a difficult period, but again, a good learning point of actually things aren't going to go to plan, and that's an extreme situation. But actually accepting, okay, well, and it was hard because you then ask the question of, well, we know the prep wasn't great. So could this have happened to anyone, or is this just because could this have been avoided? So then it's trying to hold that back of going, look, we're on the boat, we can't go anywhere, so there's no point pointing the finger, we just have to accept it best we can, move on. So then you pull in the parachute anchor in, realise it's wrapped around the rudder and the rudder's shattered. So you're like, okay, so we've now gone from a bad situation to a really bad situation. And then because we don't have enough power to run the water maker, we're then having to hand pump water every day. So rather than just running the water maker for an hour, we're hand pumping for 5 hours. And then we've effectively rowed the boat with no rudder at 250 miles from the middle of like the Gibraltar Straits, which is one of the busiest shipping channels in the world, down to the Canaries, and got in. It was like this Christmas miracle. We arrived at 7 a.m. on Christmas morning into Lanzarote, and we were just all like, we just looked like complete pirates. We were just knackered, dishevelled, like completely didn't have our land legs. We were all stoddering around everywhere, and we just looked like we were drunk. And we thought, right, we need to get some food. We're all starving. So we were like, where's going to be open at 7 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day? So we just followed all the drunk people who'd been partying, and we thought there'll be a kebabby somewhere, and followed them, and then got a kebab and chips at like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, Christmas Day.
I mean, the obvious question for me is, you got back on the boat, so
yeah,
why?
So yeah, that was only 13 days into the expedition.
And so you pulled alongside in the Canaries.
Yeah.
You could have then just got on a EasyJet flight back to the UK and thought, do you know what, this isn't meant to be. This is horrendous leadership, horrendous boat, it's not prepared.
Yeah.
But you took the decision to get back on and go across the Atlantic again with the same group of people. Why?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and ultimately that's the thing that I look towards at the end to be like, that's one of the things I'm proudest of. And don't get me wrong, I was looking on Skyscanner looking for flights, and I was like, I could get a flight tomorrow for 100.
Home for Boxing Day.
Yeah, exactly, right. And there's a real opportunity, and I knew things weren't right at this point, and there was all these different failings. But ultimately, coming home and facing the music of, how many people have you told you've rowed the Atlantic now? Going home and facing the music and saying, oh yeah, well, this, preparation was poor and the leadership wasn't what I expected and this, that and the other. People are like, oh, sounds like it was just a bit too hard, and it's like...
So was it your ego then?
Pardon?
Was it your ego then?
That kept me going? Oh, yeah, I didn't want to face that failure, and I knew that it was finite what we had to face going forward, and whilst, it was my life potentially that was at risk and my welfare, it was for a finite period, whereas if I went home, that's infinite, and I would have to constantly be facing that question every time I spoke to anyone. I'd be like, what happened on that first row? Or I didn't know I was ever going to row another ocean, it's like I left the military having been medically discharged. This was my journey of going from indoor into this was my magical journey of this was my commander course, this was my Everest, this was everything to me. To then go home 13 days later with nothing to show for it. I thought, I just have to carry on. I just have to get there. And then when I finish, I can then say, yeah, great, I finished it. And it doesn't really matter to me what happens in that time, as long as we get there. That's the key thing. So I had to readdress mentally how I just knew at that point we weren't going to be a high performing team. So I was like, reset my mindset. So it's like, these guys and this team is never going to be where we wanted it to be, or where we thought we were. So ultimately, what can I do? Well, I can change my own approach to it. So as long as everyone's safe and I'm safe, that's it. So we need to be tied on at all times. And these processes now that we talk about all the time, it was sort of born at that period of these, we have to do these things. And as long as they're done, it doesn't matter how fast we are, it doesn't matter how slick we are or how kind people want to be to one another or what tensions there are. As long as we're safe and we get across, then we just have to deal with it. And ultimately, we just got across, which is the thing. So
yeah, we've spoke about some stuff before, Duncan, privately, and I think one of your greatest strengths, and I said this to you actually when we spoke before on the way back from my training rows, is you're really quite stoic in your character's really quite stoic. I think that key thing there, I kind of challenged you there and said it wasn't your ego. It wasn't your ego. What you were able to do was, I've seen this before with you, you can change your perception of what is actually happening right now. And this is a real lesson for us all, isn't it? Often what happens to us is it's our own perception of what's happening that matters. We can't change what's going on, but we can change how we feel about it or what we want to achieve out of it. I think that's an amazing thing for anyone to listen to, really, because most people, I think, would have probably given up and gone home. I think most people, it was given that set of circumstances, that experience, that almost the feeling of being let down, and it could have been avoided, to change your perception to no, but we're not going to go do a world record for speed now, but getting across is the aim. I think, it's remarkable, really.
Thanks, Mike. It means a lot. It really does, mate. And I think, it's that thing of like, you don't really realise you're doing it at the time, but it's like, at that point, it's like the lowest point of my life. And it's like, how do I get through this? And it's just sort of survival mode. You're trying to find something, aren't you? And it's like, I knew I just couldn't go home. Like, I just would not want to. I mean, I found it hard enough anyway going back with 2 world records and a seemingly successful row. Imagine trying to go back and face that music and all the other factors I said earlier without anything. It would have broken me, I think. So, yeah, really proud that we as a team managed to finish and put our differences to one side to get back on the boat. But that was, of the road, the hardest part was getting back on. And like I say, the hardest part of a row being the first 5 to 7 days. And then we did that again. And to get back into that routine.
Well, sorry, that's a good one for me, so selfishly. So the second 5 to 7 days, is that as bad as the first? Are they all bad? Because I'm expecting this first 7 days, like, I'm ready for it. And it's meant to be horrific. Is it every time?
It does get easier, like, and I think that comes back to then the training. So like, that's saying a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and I think the more hardship you can put yourself through in your training, it'll still be hard, whatever, going into that routine, right? But I think if you know the boat better, more intimately, your kit and equipment, how it reacts, how you react, even if you are going to get seasick, what can I eat, how do I stay hydrated, how do I still perform in that situation, then you refine it. And then obviously we ended up having to stop again. So that was the first stop, and then we had more power issues on that second leg. We were hand pumping water the whole time. Power anchor for a period again. Nearly got ran down by a fishing vessel off the coast of Africa. We decided, look, it would be negligent to not stop at the Cape Verdes. We were passing it within 100 miles before we go out across the Atlantic for the final leg to South America. So we pulled into Cape Verde to Mindelo Marina to make some like repairs and hopefully to get some more solar panels, because effectively what happened was the batteries ran down again, and we'd replaced them in the Canaries and fixed the rudder. But we just realised, well, okay, actually it wasn't the batteries that were faultless, there was a power issue. So if we can get another solar panel lashed on, then that might help our sort of power problems. But ultimately we couldn't get, there was no power, solar panels on the island, so we just ended up getting there and having to then wait for the right weather window to leave again, which was 6 days. But yeah, it was again for the third time on that trip, going through the first 5 to 7 days again when we left, and it did get easier, but it's still always quite tough just getting your body from having 8 hours sleep at night time to then breaking that up and then trying to perform and run away from land. And
how does it feel? What are some of the physical and mental, it's a selfish question again, but I think quite interesting people, what does it feel like to go to that place for the first 5 to 7 days? What are you experiencing? Is it just a dogged tiredness? Is it a kind of like a spiritual thing? Like what's the problem?
I think it's different for everyone. Like I think it's different for everyone, and it depends, I think, on your conditions. If you get like quite a calm start to your row, then it'll be an easier like glide into it. Whereas if you get thrown out straight into like fairly punchy seas, it's going to be it's a real baptism of fire, isn't it? And I think it's that sort of fear of the unknown, you know, being out in the ocean at night time for the first time by yourself when you do it. You know, there's that fear of the unknown, there's that excitement and that sort of anticipation of something that you've built up for 2 years, and finally it's here. The high of leaving, you know, and like that cheer and that, you know, that sort of like, wow, we're actually going. And then it's just such a mix of emotions, right? And I think you're trying to deal with that, the adrenaline of it all, with then trying to pace yourself so you don't burn out. Because then, you know, we could go and jump on the erg now and do that for 24 hours, but then we'd be knackered, wouldn't it? So how do you pace yourself so you can still keep performing? So I think it's just that real mixture of things. It's just, and it feels quite unnatural rowing away from land, you know, you sort of just seeing it getting smaller on the horizon, and you're like, yeah, but we'll be going back in tomorrow, won't we? And then it's that point of like, all my trainer rows have been, I've only got 24 hours left or 48 hours to go. Come on, one more night, and then we're back in. And ultimately it's, no, this is my new life for the next however many weeks. And one of the guys on my first row explained it really nicely, this analogy of like blue tack, and it being like that ball of blue tack hole to begin with is you in normal everyday life, you know, having a cup of tea, sat on a nice sofa, wearing your clothes, having had a shower, and all that sort of thing. And as you get into the expedition and you realise, actually, I'm not having another shower, I'm actually not going back to my bed, I'm sitting on a bucket to go to the toilet, you sort of, the blue tack starts to get stretched as you get further away from society. But there's that sinew that connects to it as you sort of still thinking that connection of, yeah, we'll probably still be going back soon, that right? And it's that realisation that, oh no, we are in this for the next weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the blue tack at some point snaps, and then you are separated from your life as you now know it. And then your new life is this new ball of blue tack, and you're now within that, which is, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you are on the bottom rung, but you get comfortable with it and you realise that, okay, I've got my food, and I've got my little routine, and actually I'm enjoying it now. And I think that's working out when your blue tack snaps. I think for everyone it'll happen at a different period, and the more capable you are, the more experienced you are, that will happen quicker. But I like thinking about that analogy because it almost brings a measurable approach to where am I with my blue tack, and how connected am I? Am I still longing for going back in, or have I just accepted that we're good to go now?
And the quicker you accept your snap, the better.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. But why is it then people that they don't want to stick the ball back together again? Why, when they come back, do they find it hard to be that piece of blue tack again? Why do they want to remain disconnected?
I think it's so simple out there. Life is so simple, which on one hand is quite a challenge because there's not a lot to do when you get into the flow of it. But that is the beauty of it, in our day-to-day lives. It's constant, isn't it? The emails and messages and, all of that sort of thing. It's just sensory overload all the time, isn't it? And then you go out there and your mind is just free. You've got a 2-3 hour row, and you're just like, well, what am I going to think about this 2 hours? And you can just dedicate your mind to like, I'm going to think about when I was at secondary school, and just spend 2 hours, almost like meditation.
Wow.
Every day, it's and it's how you view all these challenges, isn't it? You can either view, it's like classic stories of like one weather system coming through the fleet, 2 boats experiencing the same weather, one team's ringing the safety team saying, this is horrendous, when's it going to stop? And then the next team's saying, we're flying, speed's great, keep us in this weather. So it's ultimately your perception of it, isn't it? And I think you could view that perception of the solitude as a negative, or you could go, I think one of the things I was trying to practice on the last row was just trying to be present and not wish the time away. It's very easy to be out there going, not long to go now, like, right, push on, 10 days to go, right, actually, after this Friday, we'll then only have one more Friday left on the boat, and just playing all these mind games, like it's a 2K test, and ultimately doing that is only going to wind you up, and actually just trying to go, what can I enjoy about this moment, and like trying to enjoy those little things, even though when it gets really hard, how can you bring some enjoyment to it and something magical from it. And one of the best things from my last row was 3 o'clock every day was just the hottest part of the day, and it was almost unbearable how hot it became. And we had these periods where there's just no wind at all, and we hadn't expected that. We thought the Pacific was going to be really cold, is what we've been gearing up for. We had like loads of sets of thermals, had like 2 rash vests, and because we just didn't think it was going to be that hot, and it was just baking hot. Again, prepare for the row you think you're going to get, not the one you're going to have. So anyway, we get out there, it's really tough, and 3 o'clock every day I'm rowing with Jason, the skipper, and we'd have our shift 3 till 4. It was brutal, and we hated it. Like, you'd be literally just thinking, mate, that next shift we've got is going to be so hot today. Look at this, there's not a cloud in the sky. And then anyway, this conversation happens where I reference Band of Brothers. Are you aware of Band of Brothers?
Yeah, man, amazing.
Of course, yeah, brilliant. And I referenced it, and Jay's like, what's Band of Brothers? And I was like,
what?
And he's American, right? And I was like, Jay, this is your history, mate. Like, how do you not know? The 101st Airborne, Easy Company, D-Day, Normandy and all that. And he's like, nah, never heard of it. And I said, anyway, Angus was out on deck as well. And I was like, Angus, come on, you've heard of Band of Brothers, right? And he went, like, no, I've not watched it, mate. Like,
this is like me whenever he says you've seen a film, and I'm like, nah. I don't watch it.
So I was waiting. Jordan's in the cabin asleep. Got another hour till he's out, and I'm just like praying. I'm sure Jordan's watched it. I was like, I'm sure he's watched it. And as he came on deck, I was like, Jordan, have you seen Band of Brothers? And he's like, yeah, of course I have. I was like, yes. So and then I remembered. I was like, I've got it on audiobook, downloaded like already. I was like, right, Jay, how do you fancy it? We'll do an hour a day at the 3 o'clock shift. Listen to Band of Brothers. He's like, you're on. So every day at 3 o'clock, at the worst point of the day, we'd put Band of Brothers on for 1 hour, just 1 hour, and we'd really be present, we'd really engage with it and listen to it. And like Jay'd have questions about it, we'd pause it, we'd talk about it, and I've like read the book, I've watched it loads of times, like, I just love it. So we'd have loads of really deep conversation about the Battle of the Bulge and all this stuff. So we just engaged so much around it, and it turned out that 3 o'clock was then our favourite time of the day.
No way.
So we'd look forward to it. I can't wait for Band of Brothers, man. Can't wait for it. And it was just amazing how you then just flip that, into something really positive. So
wow.
Yeah, well, I don't know when it was written, but you could write out to Stephen Ambrose and be like,
yeah, you got
hey, you got me through the 3 o'clock.
Yeah, good reference, yeah, Stephen Ambrose, yeah, that's right.
I was going to ask you a little while back, but we moved on a bit from it. How much do you think your coaching business now has its foundations based on that first row and all the difficulties you initially went through? Was that a bit of a catalyst for you, do you think, and laid some of the bedrock?
Definitely, yeah. I categorically wouldn't be doing it today if it wasn't for that first row. Like, I have everything to thank for that, and again, that's why I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, that first row, but having done it, I'm extremely grateful for it and the lessons that it taught me and that I've gained from it. So yeah, entirely thanks to that first row. Yeah.
I was going to ask, after you said that coming back from that first row was a really difficult time. How long was it before you were then like, maybe I'll do it again? Like, I'll do another one. How was that process?
So weirdly, it was. Even though, like, on the outside, it looks like I did that row, came back, and for want of ease, would normally explain, I came back, and then obviously all the hardships motivate me to want to do it again. But actually, was already signed up to do the Talisker race beforehand. So we were already running a 2-year campaign. And halfway through that, this opportunity came up to do this row, this paper seat row. So I said to my teammates, I said, look, I'm getting medically discharged from the military. I've got the time and the opportunity to do this. I've got no financial commitments, got no house to rent, nothing, no kids. I was like, are you happy for me to do it? And all my teammates, and a sign of my teammates, bearing in mind they knew they were going to lose me for 2 or 3 months from the campaign side of things, they all super supportive and just like, mate, what an opportunity. And you'll learn some stuff that's going to be helpful for us. So they were all like, mate, go do it. So I actually did that row, and I think that helped me from now, retrospective is from the coaching perspective, was I was looking at everything and like, well, how can we learn from this for our second row? And that's all I was looking at. I wasn't thinking I can build a business out of this. I was just like, how can we do this better next time? So that really helped them when I came back. I think that really helped me, that second row, to get through that mental, like that really dark period I had when I came home, because it gave me that focus. Literally the week I got back, I felt indebted to the lads to be like, I've obviously been slack for the last 3 months, been totally out of it, almost felt quite selfish. So I was like, right, I really want to come back in and really feel like an injection of effort back in. So, and it was just, again, it's just amazing how at the time you don't notice it, but it's those pivotal points of things that happen. You go, God, if I've not gone to there, these dots wouldn't have aligned. And basically came back, and it was like February. We had the Beast from the East, if you remember that, 2018. And there was a business event going on at the Alhambra Theatre in Bradford. And we were invited by the Y30 group, it's the top 30 businesses in Yorkshire, and we were invited to go there by one of our sponsors, which is Welcome to Yorkshire. Anyway, none of the other guys could make it, and obviously I was off work, so I was like, I'll just go down and wear my Roper Victory t-shirt, do a bit of networking. I had this like awful beard and this like hair all over it. It was bleach blonde. Just literally got back and went down and was handing out the Roper Victory business cards, and I was like, just networking and stuff. And from that, we ended up meeting a hotel called Grantley Hall, and they ended up coming on board as our gold sponsor, and ended up getting a job with them, setting up their gym for the next 18 months. So that then came about, and now one of the other guys in the team works for them, and he's the director of their facilities team.
Lovely hotel, by the way, if you've not been. I can highly recommend it.
Definitely go and check it out, it's amazing. But it's like, those things wouldn't have happened had not gone there, and then subsequently, not through that event, but CNG Power Up, which is a big energy firm from Harrogate, they ended up coming on board as a sponsor, who we met there as well. So all these little things where, had I not gone to that one event, it was just, again, that was really helped me, give me that something to go back to and actually use the experiences that I'd learned, the negative experiences, use them positively, And I think, as you say, how much, not only just the skill and the experiences helped me with the coaching, but my motivation. It's like I've seen the sport at its worst, and it's like that motivates me to not want other people to experience that. And yes, I think the best part of my job now with the coaching is meeting like really cool people. Like that's 100% the best part about it, like you guys today. But I think that motivation piece will always come from wanting people to have a good experience, have a positive experience. I don't want anyone to come back and feel like I did after my first row. I want people to come back and be like, that was epic, and it made the 2 years of sacrifice worthwhile, and not just the single sacrifice, everyone around you. So
yeah, but I think it really speaks to your mindset there. I know we touched on that before, but yeah, I think if it was me and I was just coming off of maybe in like the last 2 weeks of that first row, and it's been horrendous, and now I'm thinking, I've got to do this again. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this again for this. But it sounds like more like you were thinking of, we can use all these experiences and make life a lot easier for the rest of your team when that's the next one, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think yeah, it's a great point. I think if I'd come off that without the row lined up, I don't think I would have done another one. I'd have come off it and been like, never again am I getting on setting foot on Ocean Road. But I think because I literally set off on that row thinking this is the recce for the second one, like I was already committed to the second one, so it was like it was already happening. So I never once thought like I won't do it, and I only just kept thinking it'll only be better the second time because it can't be any worse. And yeah, it was a really nice opportunity to put my demons to bed, with my mates. And again, it was more of your normal campaign where we were four mates from Yorkshire, building this campaign. We had our name Roper Victory. And we had all our local sponsors and everything, so it was a really nice journey to go along. And we did all the training hours, and we come to the row itself. It was just a really nice journey to go along together, metaphorically and physically, yeah.
And of all your on-water achievements then, taking aside the Army Championships and stuff like that, what was the best? Don't have to be the most successful, but like reflecting on them, is it the Pacific race where you beat the world record by 9 days? Is it the first one for all its failings? Is it the one with your mates? Is it the one with Gus around Britain? Like what's the best when you reflect back on it?
Yeah, I think that it has to be every time the Round Britain Row, like that. It just always.
Because that'll surprise people, I think. I knew the answer to that, but I think that would surprise people because most people would have thought, well, definitely like world record across the Pacific or definitely across the Atlantic, but just going around the UK, why? Yeah. Why is that better than any of those?
It's definitely not. It's definitely not better. It's just my experience of it, and I think I think when we did that, it wasn't ever supposed to happen. So we were supposed to do Pacific in 2020, summer of 2020. And I remember calling you to tell you about it because we were already chatting at this point, and I wanted to let you know before you heard it online. But basically, our Pacific Row got cancelled the week before we were supposed to go out to do it in San Fran due to COVID, and we'd prepared so well, like physically and mentally. And again, because I'd now done my 2 Atlanta rows, this was now for me. This was like the ultimate, the Pacific Row with Latitude 35. Awesome team, like really. Humbled to be a part of that team, and I wanted to bring my A game because I wanted to really pull my weight. So I mentally and physically prepared as well as I could on a marathon every Monday at 5 a.m. for 3 months, and done all this stuff to mentally put myself in the right place. I cleared my diary for 8 weeks, whatever it was. And then the week before being told, it's happening, it's now not happening. And it was just a really crushing blow. And I think because I just not left any element of it wouldn't happen. I just constantly being like, it is going to happen, and visualising it and everything. I was just like, well, I have to do something. It was just there, and spoke to Gus on the phone, Gus Barton, who does a lot of...
Ocean Ready on Instagram, yeah. Good, great follow if you're into your training, because this guy's like a bit of a...
He's a ninja.
Yeah, a bit of a ninja when it comes to S&C. Yeah, very... Yeah. Sorry to jump off on a tangent about Gus, but I don't know if this is the right word to use, but unorthodox is the way I see a lot of his training methodology, but like seems to be super cutting edge and like on it big time.
Big time, yeah. I would say like he's the best PT I've ever come across. And put it this way, I've got lots of injuries, biomechanical problems, like a shoulder niggle, like all these different things. I'm just like a minefield, and like I'm a qualified PT myself, and I hate programming for myself because I just like. I can't do that. Oh God, what am I going to do? Gus got me in the best shape of my life during lockdown with 3 kettlebells and a TRX, and he just basically reprogrammed everything on this program that he was doing for me. He was like, right, do this, and it's like, and I was really thinking, 1 kettlebell, 1 hand, 1 leg. I was like, what's that going to do? And you do it unilaterally, getting each side strong, so you're not just firing on your positive, on your good side. No big heavy lifts, no ego stuff. It's just slow and controlled, and it's all about mobility, core exercise, like I say, being balanced unilaterally. Yeah, he's amazing, and he's really passionate about what he does, and he's an amazing ocean rower in his own right, and combining that with his sports science background, his passion, love for endurance sport, he's an amazing coach and just a great guy all around.
So follow Ocean Ready on Instagram. So the Round Britain Row.
So Round Britain Row. How much time do we have, by the way, before?
Well, we got it's now almost an hour in, but we can go for as long as you. Wow. Do you guys need to get off?
No. Yeah. I mean, I'm hungry, but I'm always hungry.
Cool. Well, yeah.
No, go for it, man, because I want to hear it. I want everyone else to hear it.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. It's nice to talk about it. Round Britain Row. We weren't ever supposed to do it, like I say. Got called. I rang Gus. I was like, mate, gutted. He's like, mate, absolutely, like, devastated, like both. It meant everything to us, this row. And I said, well, he was like, I want to do something. I was like, well, the only thing stopping us doing, the Pacific is getting out to America because of COVID. So I was like, why don't we do something closer to home? And he's like, what? How's it, right? Why don't we row around Britain? And he was like, mate, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And literally from that moment of conception of this idea, this crazy idea, within 2 weeks, we were blades in the water and we were rowing. And that was like an 18-month campaign compressed into 2 weeks. And that's not because of oh, look at us. It's because of that speaks volumes about the ocean rowing community, and the fact that because of COVID, there were boats sat around not doing a lot. So we were very fortunate. The Seablins, which was a team, brother and sister team, very kindly chartered us their boat for a very, very good price. And we had like teams come out of the woodwork, local lads, Hella High Water from Bradford, gave us a load of kit and equipment that we needed. You know, people just came out of the woodwork to give us stuff. They just wanted to see something positive. COVID was happening, wanted to see something happening, and we were doing it for the NHS and for a mental health charity called Sport in Mind. And yeah, it was a really, again, an amazing experience to go through that and to put everything under pressure, everything I'd learned about the planning stuff and actually, right, how can we get this on the road in 2 weeks, you know, because we had this backdrop of when my work started to kick off in August, and Gus was best man at his brother's wedding 1st of August. We had this window of ultimately 45 days. The world record was 40 days, so we thought, well, we're definitely in with a shot at a record. We're both athletic, we've got a good boat. It's been 7 years since the record was set or whatever it was. We're like, we've got a really good shot at it, and then we've got a 5-day buffer at the end. Let's just give it our best shot, right? And yeah, so that was an amazing experience. And it has to be said, I didn't know Gus really. I'd met him twice before that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, hardly knew him. And it was on merit of Angus. You know, Angus was vouching for Gus, and he'd rowed with him on the Atlantic already, and Angus was vouching for me. You know, we'd done various bits and pieces together. So, and to be fair, we would not have done even contemplated if it wasn't for Angus, because Angus had already rowed around Britain before. So he was giving us that instill of like, yes, lads, you can do it. And he was like, I'll be there for you every step of the way. And he weather routes us around. So
this is Angus Collins, right?
Angus
He's
Collins.
another like legendary name in ocean rowing.
Right? On Instagram, Angus Collins B, and he's absolute legend. I've always looked up to Angus, and like I say, this has to be said, would never have happened, or even I would never had the balls to go, I'm going to do it, without Angus going, yes, you can do it, as in like it's achievable, and I will lead you around. And he did. He led us around the whole thing. But ultimately, 2 weeks later, we're on the water, good to go, with a lot of support from Rannoch Adventure to get the boat ready at short notice. You know, they came on board as a sponsor as well. So again, like I say, whole community came together, which was again part of this whole feeling of like, that was exciting, right? You know, and that was part of the success of the whole thing, was ringing sponsors up. You know, too many to mention now, but bringing people up saying, look, we're doing this. When are you doing it? 2 weeks time. They're like, right, boom, here's £1,000, here's £2,000, whatever, you know. And the budget was a lot smaller, so ultimately, for a smaller fee, you would get a logo on the boat. But ultimately, it meant that it wasn't like, oh, next December we're doing this, and we'll have to go to board and look at the market. People were just excited. It was crazy, right, boom, you know, we'll get on board, you know. And that was really nice about it. And that energy just translated straight onto the boat. And we got out there, and I think in that first 5 days, we had it easy, which was good for us because it got us rowing, it got us going. And with round Britain, the things to contend with is the tide, obviously. That's something you don't have to contend with out on the ocean. And the rocky coastlines, you know, they're constantly changing. Every single section is different. And you've not just got the tide, but you've got the tidal streams. You've then got, obviously, all this geometry, which then creates even stronger tides ripping around places. You've then got to think about the wind strength, the gust strength, and the angle of it, and where's it coming from, and how strong's the tide. And the tide goes through this cycle every week of going from a spring tide, coming off, and then going onto a neap tide. So you get some really strong tides, and you get sort of fairly weak tides. And you're trying to time that of going around these places and anchoring in small little bays to get reprieve on when the tide rips against you, to then go back round on the next tide. So for the first 5 days, we rowed without stopping, and we were like, rowing around Britain. It was like this. We were told we were going to row for 6 hours, have to anchor whilst the tide went the other way, and then jump back on as the tide turned and row for another 6 hours. 5 days without putting the anchor down. We were just joking. We were going, rule 1 of round Britain, don't anchor. And we were just having all these jokes. And we were treating it like an ocean row. We were going from headland to headland on one bearing, 30 miles across, bang. Get to the next headland, 30 miles across, bang, 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 bang. And we were like, I mean, it's hard going. We hadn't had any sleep for 5 days, but we were like, this is amazing. Like, happy days. Like, it's actually not as challenging as we thought.
Were you rowing 2 up or 1 at a time?
So when the tide was going with us, we'd be rowing 1 up because it was easy going. And then when the tide turns against us, we'd go 2 up to punch against the strongest part. And then once we broke the back of the strongest part of the opposing tide, we then just flow with it, 1 up, so 2 hours on, 2 hours off again. Anyway, we had the most humbling experience of my life. Bearing in mind, at this point, I've rowed the Atlantic twice. Gus has rowed the Atlantic once. We're coaching people at this point, and we went around this point called Portland Bill, which is just south of Weymouth on the south coast of England. And we'd all heard the south coast, nothing to worry about. It'll be dead easy. Then you'll get through the Irish Sea, it'll get harder. You'll get into Scotland and it'll be nails. But by then you'll have built your experience up of this like coastal environment. So we went on Portland Bill, which is a notorious piece of water. And the thing is, you always treat the notorious bits with the respect they deserve. So you do it bang on. But it's the bit after it that no one talks about, because this bit's more revered, that then bites you in the arse. So then we come around Portland Bill. It's 50 miles from Portland Bill to start point across what we call Lyme Bay, which encompasses obviously Torquay, Exmouth, all these other places in that bay. And were we going to handrail around it or go straight across it? If we handrail around it, you're in shallower water, so if you get into difficulty, you can anchor. If you're out in the deep water, you can't anchor. There's no backup. You just have to row all the way across. 50 miles across is nothing when you're used to rowing 3,000 miles across an ocean. So 50 miles, just bang on a heading. The wind was going to come through at 13 knots from the southwesterly, and we're going to be heading from the northeast, southwest. So we're basically going to get the wind on the nose halfway across. I'm like, 13 knots? What's that to Gus and Dunk? We'll be fine. So we get bang on halfway. We're 25 miles off start point, and the weather just comes through, and it doesn't come through at 13, come through at 15, gusting 18, right on the nose. And we're like rowing 2 up as hard as we can, thinking, right, in 2 hours time, the tide's going to turn and help us out. So we've just got to punch through for 2 hours. So we row for 2 hours as hard as we physically can to keep the boat on course. 2 hours comes, the tide turns, and there's just makes zero difference. The wind is just overriding the tide, and we just can't make progress. So dive in the cabin, where's the nearest point of land? And it was a point called Brixham, which is right next to Torquay and Teignmouth, where that area. 15 miles it is. So we're like, right, we've just done 2 hours of the hardest rowing we've ever done, off the back of 5 days of hard rowing with hardly any sleep. Right, come on, 15 miles, what we're averaging, 3 knots. So if you're doing 3 knots, 15 nautical miles, it's 5 hours rowing. We've just done 2 hard hours, so we're like, that's going to be 7 hours banked, 5 hours to go. Right, okay, so we put our big boy pants on, get some chocolate bars out, and I remember it to this day. We had this Ed Sheeran playlist on the speaker, and it is literally
Interesting. Gives
me PTSD if I listen to Ed Sheeran now. It was just on for like the next however many hours. So we then rowed hard for the next couple of hours, and our average then speed dropped from 3 knots to 2 knots, and then you were doing the recalculation of distance left, and in the end it was like, we've still got 5 hours left. We're like, but we've just rowed for 2 hours.
The false summit, innit?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly that. So we're just constantly rowing basically, and it's that treadmill of just like, you're just going nowhere, even though you are going somewhere, but your average speed's dropping because the wind is picking up. So that was then the recurring theme around Britain we found. But anyway, after 11 hours of continuous rowing together, as hard as we physically could, literally you'd drop the oar for a second to shove a chocolate bar in, and then your teammate would be like, get back on the oars because we're losing it. The autopilot struggles it. Back on again. We pulled in, we dropped anchor for the first time, swallowed our pride, put the anchor down, and it was hammering it down this whole time. It was just weird, it looked like we're inside a cloud, like the whole sky was just white, and it wasn't like the visibility was down, but it was just white, and we just hammered it down for like 11 hours. And anyway, we dropped the anchor, and I just got in the cabin and just cried my eyes out. I just in absolute bits, and it was the honestly most humbling moment of my life. From being an ocean rowing coach who'd rowed the Atlantic twice, I knew at that moment I knew nothing, and it was the going like, okay, I have to like accept that we are 5 days into this row, and we are like a fraction of the way around the coast, and actually Mother Nature, when you're not going with her, and you haven't to fight into her, she's going to win every time. We have to give this the respect it deserves. And from that moment on, we were just extremely conservative with our planning, and we'd always have backup plans. We'd have like a plan B, a plan C. Right, if we don't get to that anchorage by 4 hours into this tide, we have to call it. And as frustrating as it is, because you're losing 2 hours of tide rowing, in 2 hours time you're going to get caught out. So we were really diligent with our planning. And what ultimately meant that it was added so much pressure to us from that moment on. Basically, we just had constant headwinds, and it was for the entire 45 days we ended up being out there, because we did the entire time we ended up running out of time, as you know. We only had 2 days of memorable actual tailwinds. The rest of it was either beam on, tailwinds, or no wind. And obviously the no wind was like, yes! And it just meant that constant pressure of like, fighting the conditions, and you would row for 6 hours, which would end inevitably turn into 7 or 8, because you'd fight the last bit of tide to get to the anchorage. You're always trying to squeeze out as much distance we could to get round. Meant that you would then, your rest period wasn't 6 hours, it would end up being 4 hours before your next tide started running. And then in that 4 hours, you've got a passage plan the next section. And as we know, we've sat down and done passage planning for areas. It's not simple, and every bit's new. And whilst we did have Angus supporting us, which was invaluable support, we'd still obviously have to choose our waypoints for that route, where we're going to anchor, where we're going to passage plan to get around, read the almanac, and then eat, try and get the ferro gun out, and then maybe get like 2 or 3 hours sleep before you're going to row for 7 hours again. And that pressure that basically just forged this bond between Gus and I. And whilst on an ocean row, obviously you're under pressure, but the simplicity can create complacency, and there's room there for bickering or whatever, little like niggles and stuff. There's just no time for that. And we literally went the whole way around with, every now and again we'd have like a heated moment, whatever, but we never had an argument, and we would have differences of opinion, but that was healthy. I think I was more conservative in my approach. Gus would be, let's just crack on, but we'd always then find the middle ground that actually on reflection every time we made the right call there. And that just every time, like every section we did, I felt proud as we were going around, even though the external thing of like people would come over in the sailing boats and be like, oh, what are you guys doing? Like, you're training for an ocean row? I'm like, oh, well, no, this is our challenge. And they'd be like, oh, why don't you do something like, why don't you row an ocean? And we were like, literally on our like, chin strap, like absolutely hanging out. And we were in a fortunate position to say, well, we have actually rowed an ocean, and this, we're finding this extremely difficult. And it just that constant like juxtaposition of you'd be rowing, having the hardest day of the row, look over onto the coast, and there's the family having an ice cream, playing football. And you're like, we could just call in at any point. Like,
that's got to be one of the hardest for a coastal row, right? Like you literally are, how many miles offshore you normally?
Sometimes you're anchoring literally 500 feet from the shore.
Because you never get off, right?
People shout.
When you're saying about Angus supporting you, there's no like boat with you. He's not like jumping on and off. He's on the end of a phone doing weather routing, right? You're on your own, you never get off.
Yeah.
But you got, and I would say this, I think, well, certainly from my perspective, I think there was an anticipation or an expectation given who you and Gus were that it would be you would break the world record or you'd do really well. So there's that added pressure. And then you got 82% of the way around and you had to call it because Gus had to go and be best man at his brother's wedding, which is a great shout. What was that like?
I think it was like we knew, but like when we turned John O'Groats and we started heading south, it's an amazing point of the road because it's the first time you're heading south and you like it's sort of, downhill from here sort of thing. You're like, we're heading south now, and we just knew that we had effectively 2 weeks left on the boat at that point, and we needed to, obviously looking at the constantly calculating speed, distance, time. It was like, not even in this point we didn't even care about the record. After that first experience of 5 days, we didn't. It's always been my rows 5 days, isn't it? 5 days in, but we didn't care about the record. We just wanted to finish. We honestly did not care. Yes, obviously we were going to push it as hard as we could, but we realised the magnitude of round Britain was completing. It was the honour and the privilege, and we were like, right, okay, we've got 2 weeks left now to get to Ramsgate before time runs out. And then it was realising, like looking at the weather forecast, being like, it's just not going to be achievable. So how hard and how far can we push it? So we, again, come into that thing of getting a C or an A in your exam. It's like, we know we've given it everything, and then we can be proud of that. And we just pushed it as hard as we could on every leg, and made the most of the weather every time. We never called it short. We never slacked off. We pushed it to the limit every time. And there was this constant conversation, which was difficult, of like, you get a good bit of weather and you'd be like, right, we can still do it. And then the weather would come back and you go, we're not going to finish it. And then it's like constant morale piece. And then we were looking at the coast as to where Gus's brother's wedding was, and we're like, well, if we can just pull in Norfolk and we can be down there, I'll stay on the boat, mate. I won't even come on land. You'll just go to the wedding. Then the wedding party will come back to the boat and wave us off, and then we'll finish 2 days later, like, boom, and then I can go off to work. And it was all these, like, ideas and conversations, and then, the worse that the weather was coming through, obviously the less that we were going to get down the coast in that 2 weeks. Fortunately, we got back into England. We got back to Northumberland, and it was just off the coast of Amble where we were like, we're going to have to call it here. We're going to have to call it there, because that's the only place on this stretch that we're going to get to before we need to get the trailer out, and then you need to get back to your brother's wedding. And he was, like I say, best man. And the thing was, we had to stop for Gus's wedding, but he was able to go to the wedding and come straight back to boat and carry on. But I couldn't carry on because I had all my work booked out from August, having not worked a day that year because of COVID. I was backed out through till October. So we had to stop for Gus, but we couldn't carry on because of me. And that was the thing. So Gus had the wedding, and the next week came back on his road bike, took the train from London back to Amble, and cycled the remaining 450 miles on his road bike, which is a testament to him.
And when you jumped on a rowing machine at home. Because I think I jumped on 2 hours with you for a shift, and what was that then? So you did the remaining distance on a rig?
We sort of agreed it individually. We sort of had this idea at the same time in our own cabins, and we came out and was like, well, we're not going to finish it, but we'll finish it in our own way. And like I say, I was busy through till October, and then I got a week where my first sort of slack week, if you like, or admin week. So booked it all in, and I drew out the shape of a Rannoch R25 rowing boat with tape in my local village hall, the dimensions of, put my sleeping bag in the bow cabin, put my rowing machine on the deck, as it were, and rowed 2 hours on, 2 hours off until I completed the distance. And it was cool because the guy who was doing the tracker basically put me on a rowing machine on the tracker so everyone could see where I would have been. And Barry Hayes from Shoutbait Socials, who's running our social media, he would give updates as to Duncan would be now off the coast of wherever now, like Whitby, and he can see this and he can see that. So he still made it really interactive for people to follow. And it was a great experience. Again, part of that thing of just that feeling of the community. So Mike, joining in at 2 a.m, doing a 2-hour shift to 2 till 4 a.m. with me. And it ended up individually over them 4 days. 45 different people came and did a 2-hour shift, whether it was rowing, swinging a kettlebell for 2 hours, walking, whatever it was. And it just meant, even though we didn't finish it, it was very quick to feel like it was a huge success. And I think, it was hard coming in and wanting to get the flare finish in Ramsgate, with or without a world record, but getting there at the finish with all our friends coming down and families to actually finishing in Amble, and no one really knew where we were going to be. So it was just Gus's wife in the end who was there. My partner was at work, so couldn't come. And it was one person there. And again, it was sort of, on one hand, anticlimactic, but on the other hand, it was a sort of quite a personal finish, and it wasn't long, I don't think, until really seeing the positives, because it was only 6 or 7 days later I was back on an ocean rowing boat, now flat out with coaching, and it was great because the confidence I then had, 7 weeks of anchoring with onshore winds, offshore winds, being in really tricky situations, doing real micro navigation to get around places, because we could never just have the luxury going, we just won't go out in it today, we'll call it tomorrow, because we were under the cosh the whole time. Meant I was going out with my novice crews who were like, coming in 25, 30 knot winds, and we were already out there. Obviously, I wouldn't go out in that, but if it comes through strong and it's like, what do we do? It's like, just throw the anchor out, just throw it out. It's like, yeah, cool. And you've got that complete trust in it because you've just lived on it for 7 weeks. And it's I don't know where my rucksack is, but I even carry one of the carabiners round with me from that row. You might see it on my rucksack all the time, and it's not because I'm going to be abseiling into a building, but it's just the memento. That was one of the carabiners we used to anchor when we went around Britain, and Gus and I took one. That was our one memento from the row each, because we gave the boat back and sold all the bits that we bought for the campaign cost. And ultimately that carabiner is like, it held our lifeline for 7 weeks, and it's that memento and that memory of just all those moments. That's what that stands for me. So yeah,
it's inspiring stuff, man. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about this stuff, but I think there's some real lessons for people listening around perception, and because everyone's got, in taking back to jiu-jitsu, everyone's got their ambition, and that might be to be British champion, it might just be to lose some weight, it might be whatever, and it might be taking you a bit longer, and it might be you get injured and you get a setback, or perhaps you don't make the podium. you've got to switch your perception over and try and take the positives away from whatever you're doing. I think Duncan's story on loads of different levels, and there's loads of examples that we've spoken about that we haven't had a chance to speak about today, show you that it is possible to have a really positive experience no matter what the outcome, depending on what your perception of what's just happened is, right?
Absolutely, it's been a great story. I mean, I hope you end up either coming back to do about 7 more podcasts or at least write a book about some of the stuff.
But it's worth saying as well, just quickly, you know, you guys know that I'm doing the Atlantic next year. Duncan's my ocean rowing coach. I won't have anyone else coaching me. You know, I've got 100% trust in you as my coach for all the experiences and everything else. I'm very grateful he's helping me out as well to get ready for that. So, yeah, I think let's do it again. And perhaps when I get back, we'll have or before I go, we'll have another conversation about.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, great if we could sort of dive into your mindset and preparation before you go. Yeah, but no, thank you so much for having me. And
it's also a pleasure.
Questions have been amazing. Like normally, sort of like where do you go to the toilet, but actually quite therapeutic for me sharing that story and on a sort of quite a deep level. So thank you so much for having me, and it's been a great experience being here today.
First jiu-jitsu today.
Amazing. I love it. I love the respect everyone's got for each other, like the sport. You know, just witnessing that from the outside in. You know, never done anything like this before, and it's been amazing. And again, a humbling experience coming in and being a complete and utter novice here. And you know, I was huge respect to everyone who steps on that mat, because it's an amazing sport, having just experienced it for 1 hour. But yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, buddy.
Okay, guys, till next time. See you later. Awesome.